for the webinar today. My name's Oliver Parker. I'm on the commercial team here at Blackbird. I'm also joined this morning by Jeff Krebs. Good morning, Jeff. It's particularly early for Jeff today.
Good morning.
Hey, Jeff. So I'm based in the UK on the London team. Jeff is actually based over in Toronto in Canada, and Jeff is our resident expert in not just Blackbird, the product and what it can do, but in general editing environments and some of the other more traditional edit applications. So what we're going to look at today, as you know, is how Blackbird fits in there, some of the advanced features we have, and you know, Jeff's definitely the right person to take us through that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a bit of a brief introduction this morning, just so you know what we're looking at. Also, I think we've probably got quite a few people on the call today who have seen an introduction to Blackbird before or a demonstration before. So I'm going to keep this pretty brief, but I will set the scene. And then I'm going to ask Jeff to show us some of the other features we've got. So a couple of quick points before we kick off. Inside the Zoom webinar session now, you should see a Q&A button. Please feel free to type questions as we go. They won't appear publicly until we answer them, and we may answer some during the webinar. But what we'll generally try and do is keep these and answer them kind of verbally at the end. Jeff and I will present to you for maybe 30-35 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the session as well. Towards the end of the presentation as well today, you'll get a poll pop up on your screen. If there's more information you need, or you specifically want us to contact you, there'll be details for that as well. Okay, so let's get going. As I said, a pretty brief introduction just to set the scene today. So I think everybody already knows you've joined the call today because you know Blackbird is a leading cloud video editing platform. And what we really do is we enable our customers to access their media, and this can be file-based content, but also a lot of live stream-based content. And that source media can exist on-premise, in data center, in public cloud providers, essentially wherever you've already got it. And we act as an access point to that, to log into a standard web browser and do anything from simple clipping, sequencing, logging, metadata enrichment, through to a full real-time nonlinear editor before we publish out to digital and social endpoints or back into infrastructure for broadcast and other distribution. Now, we've done a lot of demos and webinars in the past where we've focused on other workflows that Blackbird really focuses on here, primarily very fast turnaround of content, fast turnaround clipping from live sports, highlights creation and news package creation from lives. And also we've done some webinars about how we fit into partner infrastructure. So, you know, if we look at the type of customers we're dealing with, from sports teams and leagues, up through broadcast service providers, large broadcast networks, and so on, across news and sports and production and entertainment. Those kind of fast turnaround workflows and live workflows are really important. But just as important, and obviously a real key aspect in terms of what Blackbird can offer as a browser-based solution, is some of the more advanced functionality that we've got. And this is particularly important when we look at the professional usage that we have within customers you can see here, like A&E networks in the US, where we're really spread across a whole range of workflows. Now, just as an overview to what we're going to look at today, Jeff's going to give us a very brief introduction to the editing philosophy of Blackbird, how we fit in and align with traditional edit tools, in general timeline management, and then we're going to look at a couple of use cases here. One is what we might call montage editing. So this is kind of reasonably short form, snappy, but kind of quite visually appealing editing, often used to cut down sports content or entertainment content into montages, often set to music. And some of the features and advanced functionality we've got that can really speed up and improve that experience. We're going to have a look at that. We're also then going to look at how we, often within that content, support and manage closed captions, which is something that's becoming increasingly important in lots of different platforms. We'll move on then to another use case, which is actually the support of Multicam inside the Blackbird editor. Specifically in this webinar today, we'll have a look at how we can use that functionality to create easy but complex kind of interview edits in a multi-camera environment. And then finally, something we don't get to really talk about too much in a standard introduction or webinar is the publishing aspect of Blackbird. So this is not just what we can include in the content on Publish, but also some of the options we've got for delivery and how we fit not just into, as I said, the kind of social and digital world, but back into more advanced delivery for often OTT VOD or even traditional linear broadcast as well. So they're the key points we're going to cover, and we'll work through them in the webinar today. Now, one last thing from me before I hand over to Jeff is to just set the scene and contextualize the technology and the architecture, so you can see how this, what we're actually working on here and how this fits into your environment. So as a quick introduction, you can check this out on the website. I always start here because it's something you can go and see for yourself at the end of the webinar today. If you go to blackbird.video and the solution page here, you'll find an example of using the Blackbird technology. Now, this is a clip that I can play, and some of you may have seen this before and come and had a look, as you would expect in any kind of website, but you'll notice immediately it's a little bit different. I can see the content coming ahead of me. I have a visualization of shot changes and things like that help me to navigate. And I can also start to move through this in a completely non-linear way with no buffering, no latency, no download times or delays in access to the media. This includes accurate frame-based navigation. This is not just a timecode overlay in terms of frame accuracy. We actually have access to every single image within the content and the audio associated to that as well. And simple things such as just playing multiple speeds and playing backwards multiple speeds and so on. Now, this is pretty fundamental if you think about professional video editing and access to media, but this kind of navigation is what's impossible with any other kind of browser-based technology, and that's what's unique to Blackbird. We have about 14 patents around this technology. So this is what's at the core of the platform, is a way to access media in a web browser differently to anybody else. And the way that we use this in an architecture is shown on this final slide from me today. So just as I said, a bit of context. Essentially what we do is we deploy a piece of software called Blackbird Edge into your infrastructure. So wherever your media exists, this could be on premise, in the public cloud, in a data center, taking live streams, as you can see the formats there, or just watching for files on a network attached storage or an S3 bucket or something like that. We don't move your source media. Okay, we just integrate into your infrastructure and we watch that storage or take those streams. Now, as soon as Blackbird Edge receives a stream or sees a file, we're going to transfer that into that Blackbird format up to the Blackbird cloud, and that's what the users edit on. Now, what we're doing here is we're not moving files. Essentially, what we're creating is a completely accessible cache of content, cache of frames up in the cloud that users can access and even sit and work on a live stream from as little as a 2 megabit internet connection at the bottom end of the scale there. Now, when the users have created their content and they publish something, we don't actually egress any video or anything like that from the cloud. We just send an edit decision list back to that Blackbird Edge application on your infrastructure, and then we use your source media to render a file and publish it. And that, as I said before, can go straight to social media. It could go back into the storage infrastructure in the public cloud. It could go back into your on-premise or local storage infrastructure, or it could be a handoff with a custom XML sidecar back into a CDN or a MAM function or something like that. Now, you can see down in the bottom corner there as well, we also actually have the ability to, instead of outputting a finished file, to output essentially an EDL that goes back into common tools like Avid and Premiere for further finishing as well. So a couple of advantages to the architecture here that we talk about a bit. One is the fact that, again, you don't have to move your media. So if you've got content on-prem, it can stay on-prem and we'll give you a cloud workflow on top of it. If you've got content in the cloud, you can keep it where it is, and we'll just give you more tools and more ways to utilize the content that exists there already. The second thing is obviously in terms of the publishing, which we're going to get into later in the webinar, is that because we're always using source media to publish from, we're not compressing content into our own platform or anything like that, that we can give you a a low bit rates file output as an H.264, maybe suitable for social media or digital endpoints. And we can also give you a very high quality, high bit rate, standard DNX or MXF output or something along those lines back into broadcast infrastructure. So there's a lot of flexibility along those lines. And probably the biggest benefit with Blackbird when we talk about the architecture of the solution is around scale. Now, if you're aware of alternatives, they usually revolve around taking a desktop application and hosting it somewhere else in the cloud. And when you do that, there's a fair bit of connectivity, storage, and virtual machine infrastructure that goes along with every single user. Now, with Blackbird, if we have the edge running on your content, you can have 1 user or 10 users or 1,000 users accessing that. There's no infrastructure needed because it's all standard browser access on a standard laptop with a standard internet connection. So that, as I said, sets the scene about exactly how we've set this up. And you can kind of see, obviously, then the power of the cloud that we've got in the middle there and what that allows us to do there. So, Jeff, are you still with us?
I sure am.
Excellent. So I'm going to stop my screen share.
Perfect.
And hand over to you. So I think, before we, as I said, the first use case we're going to investigate is this montage editing. But it'd be great if you could tell us as a starting point, a little about just the real basics of Blackbird and editing on the platform.
Certainly. Let me just do a reshare there. There we go. I'm guessing you could all see my screen, and thank you so much for joining this morning. We really appreciate it. So we're going to just begin with the fundamentals very, very quickly before we get to the really pretty pictures and the more advanced editorial features. The first thing that you'll notice, I'm running in Google Chrome in this instance, and we work with a source, edit, timeline metaphor. The timeline could actually do 6 different things, but today we're going to be using it for mostly editorial. And we're going to talk a little bit about the fundamentals and what makes Blackbird different as a cloud-based editor, and then the equivalency to what you may already know. There's a lot of other editors out there. They're the popular ones, such as Adobe Premiere, Media Composer, Resolve, and certainly Final Cut, and how we have an equivalency to those, but with ubiquitous access in a cloud-based environment. So the first thing I'm going to do is load up a sequence. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to get to the pretty pictures a little bit later, but as you can see over here, we have 4 shots that make the sequence. We have Blackbird rocks my world. Now, when we take a look through the sequence, it's a time-based horizontal sequence. What makes Blackbird very unique as a cloud-based environment is that, in fact, it is a non-destructive editor, which makes it go significantly beyond an in-out clip environment. And what we mean by that is I could jump directly into a trim mode. And because I jumped into this trim mode, it means that I have access to the original source in a non-destructive manner, where I could extend out shots or cut into shots just like this. And of course, there's the other parts of the equivalency, and that would include the assembly features such as splice, overwrite, replace, and then of course, things like being able to mark clips and lift them out and delete them, which is an expected function, or do something called a ripple delete, which allows you to delete and close the gaps. We'll just undo that over there. So that's what we call the assembly features, and super important, always remember that it is a non-destructive editor. That's step 1. Step 2, you'll notice that we're dealing with video layers here. We have layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. As a matter of fact, I can go up to 18 layers of video. At some points, I have to pinch myself and remember that I am in a cloud-based browser editor. So it is pretty unique. And in this environment, I can do things like work in an A/B role, type of environment. So if I drop a clip on top, you can see we have video 1, and when we come up to video 2, it overtakes the timeline at that point. Of course, I can trim this out And I'll just trim out the end over here. And we could even do things like blend-based effects on the layers. So if I go through this, you can see I have blend abilities. So it's not just for A/B roll editing, it's for A/B roll editing, often used as cutaways and blending as well. So that's the second scenario. The third part of this equivalency to other editors is the ability to add additional layers. Now, you can see here we have the word "to the top" over here, and it's seemingly over just a black frame. In fact, what it's doing is it's now being used as a layer composite system. So here's an alpha channel effect. Again, just compositing over the entire sequence like that. So very quickly, what that has given us is splice, overwrite. We'll talk about replace in a second. It's what we call a sync point edit. And then delete, ripple delete, trim, and composite. Those are the things that you have to remember about this application. In fact, that it does have an equivalency to what you may already be familiar with as well. Finally, you will notice that I can even have a muscle memory equivalent for keyboard shortcuts. So for instance, if I like using Premiere Pro and I want to come into Blackbird, the goal is to not to relearn the application, but just to handle it the same way that you already understand, and you can do all sorts of keyboard equivalencies and apply them to your workflow. So that gives you a little bit of information about the editing metaphor and the editing paradigm and how we are equivalent to that.
Thanks, Jeff. So if we start to build on this, we've got some other features that help to kind of speed up, as we say, this montage or kind of promo style editing, haven't we?
That's true, absolutely. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take a little bit of a look at montage style editing. I'm going to open up a sequence over here. Now, this is kind of interesting because it's now what we have is video and audio. We haven't really spoken about audio. And I'm just going to play through this and just let me know if you could hear the audio first.
We can, absolutely.
Beautiful. And what we're going to do now is something a little bit different. We have a black frame on top. We have audio, and I want to use my sensibility of being able to tap to the beat of music rather than looking for waveforms where I should put the edits. I'm just going to use a keyboard shortcut here called Add Edit, and by simply playing, okay, so what I've done there is I've tapped to the beat of music and I've added transition points, as you can see along this timeline. Now what I want to do is fill those transition points. I'm just going to load up a clip over here, and I'm going to use some Buffalo Sabres footage of a hockey game, and I'm going to fill those points. Now, to make it easier for myself to find material within a 3-hour game, I've actually used the marker technology inside Blackbird to be able to find some of this. What's really interesting about this type of workflow is you'll notice we have in marks and out marks on the source and in marks and out marks on the edit side. However, I don't want to use those in marks and out marks. What I want to do is use the sync point, basically the position that I am in time, and we'll just jump back to that face off, the position that I am in time and the position on the timeline, and just drag and drop it over to the timeline where it did a sync point edit. It's not for front timing, it's not for back timing, it's for position-based center timing. A super quick way. So let's take the breakaway. I'll add 3 or 4 edits down here. Do it very, very quickly. And let's do this. There we go. And one more. And there's a save. Perfect. Okay, so now what you'll notice is I've cut to the beat of music and the transition points will be right on the beat. Just like that. So that's an interesting way of doing the editorial process without ever having to do a single mark. It's what we call a sync point edit. However, what may happen at this point, and I'm just going to clear the sequence and load up another one. There we go. So this is one that I've just added a couple of more shots to. What may happen is you may need to, in fact, go and trim the edits, but not the duration. You're not extending off the tail or cutting into the head, but you may need to actually just adjust the head and tail marks and slip or roll shots. So that's the other scenario over here, is that now that you have a variety of shots here, you may want to expose a different part of the shot. And what we can quickly do is look at our slip monitor, which will show me the head frame and the tail frame, and just roll that duration. If you look at the little blue marker above where my mouse is pointing to, you could actually see what's happening here. I'm slipping the shot within the duration, just like this. So if I want to slip the shot, I can just slip it around just like that. And it makes it a very, very quick and efficient way of assembling a sequence. Let me just play this out one more time so you can just see the result. So great for a highlights package. So that gives you a little scenario on about how to slip the edit points.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So I guess once we've got that content in there and we're happy with the shots, we'd start to look at adding transitions and transitional effects.
Absolutely.
We might do a little bit of that in a standard demo, but I think there's probably a bit more.
Let's go to some advanced tools. And so transitional effects. What's the most simple transitional effect? A cut. But as they say, if you can't solve it with a cut, if you can't solve it, you dissolve it. And that's what we've done over here. So essentially it's a blend between two shots. Now, even though I've done that, I could of course trim this out. That video waveform with all the thumbnails will show me as well if there's a shot change and whether it should be inclusive or exclusive to the edit. So again, just move up and down the timeline and add a dissolve. Now, a dissolve may not be very apropos for this type of edit. So of course I can go into an effect palette of video transitions. And of course we can't do a single demo without doing a star wipe. So here you can see we have the star wipe. Now that's also not really going to work for this. So I'm just going to undo all of these. And what I've also have the ability to do is do fades. Now in this case, what we call burst to white certainly may be more relative to what we want to do with this type of environment. So I'm just going to quickly do a burst to white. We can actually program Blackbird to burst to any color, but for sports, as you can see over here, burst to whites work quite nicely. And the result looks like this. Just like that. So there's our burst to white effect, and works quite nicely. Now let's continue on. I'm going to clear this monitor out, and I'm going to just load up another sequence here. And let's take a little look and focus on the very last shot over here. So what you'll notice is all these shots are actually full motion. In this case, I'm in North America, so this is at 29.97 frames per second. But what we may want to do is do motion effects to the shot. Now, we don't have to do it to the source. We can attack it directly from the timeline. And what I would like to do is not so much of a slow motion or a speed up, but I want to combine them together to do a motion ramp effect, which is quite popular. You see it a lot in reality shows and sports. So we're going to do the same type of thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break an edit over here. So you can see I've broken the edit. And this time I'm going to use my motion tool. And in this case, you can tell on the timeline, I'm going to speed it up. The result looks like this. There's a little bit of a speed up, and I'm going to slow down from the match frame point to the second part of the shot, and the result would look like this. And let's slow that down even more. Again, no penalty for slowing that down at all. And let's do it just a little bit more. So what that allows you to do in real time, mind you, and there's no rendering. You'll notice that we don't use the R word when we're working in Blackbird. There's no such thing as a render inside the Blackbird editor. Everything has to happen in real time without any type of processing in the background. So there we've dealt with horizontal based effects. And now what we're going to do now is we're going to clear out the timeline, and we're going to open kind of a full package version of the sequence. So as we showed you before, I'll just quickly add those bursts to whites, just like that. Put a couple at the beginning. We have the motion effect. Again, I did it on another shot, but you can see there I'm using it in an A-B roll scenario. Now, the next step that I may want to do at this point is add layers. So this is exactly what we're going to start to deal with right now. We have 3 layers. Now we're going to talk about vertical editing. We have video layer 3, which is a crowd shot, video layer 2 with a gentleman who is dancing in the stands, and of course a logo on the bottom layer. So we're going to want to figure out how to deal with these layers and what we can do with them. First thing we want to do is to be able to step into the layer. And so it's not just working vertically. Now we're exposing subtracts of the layers. And in this case, I could begin to scale this down. I can move it around the screen, things like that. I could also keyframe it if I wanted to do that. I'm just going to get rid of that very quickly. I could also save preset templates so that they can be applied to these layers. So I will take a layer 3 motion template, and I've added it in. And I'm just going to solo this layer so you can see what it looks like. So there we have it flying in from the top. Let's go to layer 2, and let's jump to the beginning, and let's apply another bit of motion with keyframes. And as you can see now, we have a second layer. Now, the first layer is the Buffalo Sabres logo. So if I want to go and treat that maybe as something that a little bit different, I can treat it as a blur effect. Now, that's probably not appropriate to do to somebody's logo, so I'll just remove the blur effect just for now, and we'll just composite over a non-blurred image just like this. Just like that. So what it gives you the ability to start to build these composites. And of course, they could be modified. If you want to step in a little bit more just to understand some of the other controls, we have full keyframe control, and that does include being able to do ease-ins and ease-outs of the motion using Bezier curves as well. So it gives you that type of flexibility in the layers. Now,
excellent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jeff. I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, it's, I think a couple of things that this shows really. One is the fact that a lot of people will assume Blackbird as a browser-based and cloud-based editor. probably can't even do some of this kind of functionality around layer control and content control, but also the fact that we've got the usability aspect of it to enable the editors and the content creators to generate this kind of stuff really quickly, really easily, and just churn this kind of content out, in pretty short space of time.
What I'll do just very quickly, just before, while we switch to the next section, I'm going to actually take this packaged, and this is the full-on packaged sequence that I built, and I'm going to just take it to do a Twitter publish in the background. I'll just let it do that because I just want to tease that ahead of time, and we could certainly let that happen as well.
No problem. Yeah, well, we can come back and have a look at that when we get to the publishing section. Excellent. So the second thing we were going to look at today was around closed captioning. Obviously, this is a really important. Some regions, it's a legal requirement now. Whenever you're pushing content out to multiple platforms, that we've got to have captioning in there. So I know what the two things it would be great if you could show us, Jeff, was one, a little bit about just what we support in terms of the caption data coming in and out, but then also how we can actually use that and manipulate that inside the timeline.
Absolutely. So this, as you said, this is in my region in North America. This is an FCC requirement. This isn't just a nice to have in an editor. This is absolute compliance that needs. Sorry, let me just get rid of that. The absolute compliance, and Blackbird absolutely supports it. As a matter of fact, just a little bit of a brag point, Blackbird was nominated for an Emmy Award for their closed caption integration. So I should just let you know that in fact happened. And here we have, again, the same footage with closed captioning. We're going to look at it in another view, though. We're going to look at it in a log view. So if we take a look, let me just open up my closed caption data. There we go. We can turn sync off. We don't really need it. So closed captioning is either derived from embedded captions within a file. It could certainly be live captions. So through, let's say, SDI or HLS, live captions will grow along with the source. And it's not just about displaying the captions, because just displaying the captions really wouldn't fit the entire bill of what needs to be delivered. So the first thing that you'll notice is, of course, captions will show up in a log environment as well as in the source environment. What this does give you is it does give you the ability to search through the closed caption content. As you can see, I can edit any of this closed caption. I can edit the data if I want. Because it's hockey, I could type in he shoots, he scores, but I'll just use the word goal for now. Or maybe what I'll do is I'll use the word score. There we go. And I can select a range. And this is a very quick way of creating a highlight from closed caption. So I'm just going to direct that range over to my edit side. And now that range of caption data is on the edit side. First thing that you'll notice is that, and this really goes back to the very first thing that I mentioned, Blackbird is a non-destructive editor. So if I go and trim out these closed captioning, this video rather, the closed caption extends along with the video. Super important to know that. At this point as well, what we may want to do is we may want to reposition the caption on the screen. So I could position it in the top, the middle, and the bottom. So if you have a scoreboard on the bottom, you don't want to cover it. And then most important is the ability to edit those closed captions as well. So you can see, even though these captions began as embedded captions, I can go and edit it. If there's a spelling error or whatever it happens to be, it can be edited as well. So it's not just display, it's display, edit in a non-destructive manner.
Yeah, I think, one of the things we hear from people a lot is, an expectation to support the closed caption data coming in and a publish of that closed caption metadata as well. But that often one of the most difficult things is exactly what you've just shown, which is not only trimming and manipulating and modifying the closed captions along with the video edit, but actually going in and manually updating that as well. So that's true. It's only a quick thing to have a look at, but actually often, as I said, increasingly important as in terms of how people are using Blackbird and creating content.
It's a very overlooked part for sure. Absolutely.
So Jeff, everything we've done so far there has been essentially from a single source or a single camera or stream. Mm-hmm. The other use case we were going to have a look at today was around multi-camera support as well. So I know you've got some prepared a bit of content. We're going to look at a use case of cutting an interview, right?
That's right. So multi-camera, by the way, let's just begin with looking at a source. Now, in today's climate, oftentimes you won't be able to get to a location. So especially in news and entertainment, multi-camera is most often now used as Zoom interviews, where you'll take a gallery view and an isolated view and basically do a lock between those cameras. Oftentimes they are cameras iPhones or things like that. So on premise, absolutely we can deal with. But in today's climate, what I'm going to do is show you more of a Zoom interview multi-camera environment. So here's a camera with a gallery view from Zoom, and you can see it's from an upcoming film called The Boys in the Band. I don't believe it's been released yet. The other thing, of course, if we take a look at it, we have the isolated cameras, the switched cameras over here. So you can kind of see how that worked. First thing that you want to know is that you can lock cameras together. We can lock up to 18 cameras together. I'm just going to create a multi-camera clip over here, and we'll do a manual sync on it for now. And I'm going to load it as a source. So you can see we have this sunk up. Now, how do I know it's perfectly sunk up? Not all cameras are created equal, and not all time code is created equal. There may be a frame delay. And so let's go take a look to see.
And thank you for.
There we go. We'll just turn that down a little. Sorry, I didn't mean to play that yet. We're going to look at the video. Now we can see each one of the video tracks as a sync point, and I can see where the switched cameras occur over here. But that's not a great indicator of whether or not a camera has been sunk. I'm going to use as my video or my audio amplitude, if you will, and I'm going to look at camera 1 and camera 2, and clearly I can see that I'm a frame out of sync. So I can slip and that sync and lock the cameras together. I'll just close the sync tool, and I could open and close that whenever I want. So if something drifts, I could actually maintain sync throughout the video. So there we have the source, and certainly we can log all the source information on a multi-camera clip. But what I'm more interested in doing is actually doing an edit. I'm going to close down the source, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the edit side in a multi-camera view. First thing I want to do is unlock the audio track, and I'm going to turn off the audio track because I just want the video to switch. I don't want the audio to switch. And I'm going to use my number pad on my keyboard to be able to switch between the cameras live with no latency. So let's do that right now. I'll begin with the gallery view, and we'll start to play.
Freak. I was lucky.
I'm just going to turn the audio down. I'm going to guess it might be a little loud from where you're sitting. Let me just adjust the audio level so that it doesn't blow everybody away. There we go. And we'll just listen to that one channel for now.
Enough to see you guys on stage. So thank you for that. And thank you for this. Jim, let's just start with you because, wow.
So I've cut from camera 1 to camera 2, and I'm going to continue playing.
Your character, Michael, I mean, he
stand by to cut.
That, it's amazing. And I wanted to know if you had any little bit of hesitation revisiting this guy.
Kate, camera 2.
Not for any reasons of not wanting to go there again. It would have
cut back to the reaction.
Was the fear, the summer that we spent on Broadway was one of the most rewarding experiences.
There you go. So what we're able to do is do a live cut while playing multiple streams, up to 18, by the way. Not that I've ever had the opportunity to work with 18. I've had the opportunity to work with 6, which is pretty normal for me. But we can do the live cut, switching the cameras with no latency, seeing the sync relationship at all times.
My life, in all honesty, and certainly career. And I worried of this revisiting and it paling in comparison.
And there you go. The end result, just so you know, would look something like this. So, you know, this is a full multi-camera edit, including things like lower third titles. And this is Jim Parsons from The Big Bang Theory. So, you know, we're IDing him, IDing this next person, just like that. So you have a live multi-camera cut, seeing the relationship between the cameras and the edit monitor, being able to do a live switch in the Blackbird browser.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jeff. I think it's you know, as a reminder, and also to answer one of the questions we've had in, everything we're doing in terms of managing multiple tracks, the transitions, the multicam playback and syncing that we've got here is all rendered in real time by the browser session itself. So we're never going back to a server-side function. We're not going back to the source or anything like that to process and provide previews to this. Everything is rendered 100% in the browser, and that's just a standard web browser. No toolbars, no extensions, no plugins, and no local media either. So it really shows off the power of the technology that Blackbird has, that unique technology we've got at the center of the platform that allows your users to come in and navigate, view, and obviously manipulate and edit content like this in a native browser environment as well. So excellent. Now we've just got a couple of minutes left quickly to talk about the publishing, and then we're going to open up for some questions. Mm-hmm. So as you can see, when Jeff drags and drops here, essentially depending on the published destination, we'll get a different pop-up to put in metadata. This is integrated into the various APIs of social platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, Dailymotion, and so on. But essentially, remember that function, that render function, is happening back on the source on your infrastructure. So there's no wait time and there's no tie-up for the user that sat inside the edit interface at all. Now, there are two things to highlight really in terms of the publishing. And one, Jeff, is around the automated kind of branding side of Blackbird.
Absolutely. So that's really exciting. What you'll notice here, by the way, I've just published this little section. You know, I could have tweeted it out. Maybe I want to do a little bit of a push for social, and I don't want to put the entire interview out, but I wanted to tweet it out, but I wanted to brand it as well. Let's take a look at the result of what I just published first, and then we'll explain how the branding works. So YouTube is doing its thing. We're going to wait a second. I'm going to refresh because the Blackbird sequence has already been delivered to YouTube, and there it is. And YouTube's doing what it does. Now, here's something new. You didn't see this Blackbird logo in the edit.
Jim, let's just start with you because, wow.
And we'll just jump to the end.
Experiences of my.
So there we go. So that's the section I published. There's a header. There's a pre-roll.
Jim.
There's an overlay, and there's a post-roll.
One of the most rewarding experiences of my.
Now, what we've done as well, and this is really important, you'll notice it's a true integration. It's just not a fade up and a fade down. It integrates into the edit. How did we do that? Well, that's the brilliance of our programming and engineering team who designed this type of environment. But what we actually did to get there was we predefined what the pre-roll and the post-roll were inside the platform. The way we did that is in our branding location. If we take a look over here, Perfect. So in branding, what I did is I created a pre-roll and a post-roll using the specific frame rates and programmed it into the platform. So when you're editing and publishing, you don't have to worry about doing this on the timeline. It's done for you in the background.
Excellent. So that's logo overlays, slates, pre and post roll bumpers, and the other thing that we can do within that button configuration is to do portrait and square publishing as well.
That is absolutely the case. True.
The other side of publishing that we don't necessarily need to demo to everyone, but inside the control center here, where Jeff is right now, you can see any one of those published destinations, of which you can have as many as you like. It's not just where you're sending the content and the branding and those other aspects, but what we're sending. And one single publish can actually have multiple outputs, as you can see here, different resolutions, bit rates, audio rates, different encoding and wrapping of that content. Also with the option to output EDL metadata, audio only publishers, and a whole raft of content here. So you know, Blackbird is not just about the creation, but it's about being able to then serve in an automatic fashion that your users don't need to worry about, to be able to serve that content out in the correct format for multiple different endpoints and platforms at the end of it as well. So one single drag and drop from a user is going to put on all of the appropriate branding and potentially deliver multiple versions of that content to multiple different endpoints there as well.
Absolutely the case. True.
So I think that's time up for us, Jeff, in terms of the presentation. We ran over a little, but we've still got everyone on, so that's good. Hopefully it was interesting for everyone. We're going to jump now in and just answer a few of the questions that we've had in here as well. So I mentioned one about rendering. About how everything is real-time rendered in the browser, and to answer another question about the kind of the internet speed for this. As I mentioned, if I'm working on a live stream, that can be from as little as 2 meg internet. Obviously, when we're building up with multi-cameras and we might have potential sources, that's going to start to go up. But it's always going to be significantly less than you would need with any kind of virtual desktop or remote connection. And that's been something that's very significant to our customers recently, particularly where users have had to go home to look at this. We've got another question here about thumbnails. So absolutely, when we publish, not only will we deliver the finished video asset, potentially a custom XML sidecar, but also we can generate a thumbnail that's going to end up on your social platform or back on your CMS. Jeff, we've got a question here about publishing endpoints being configurable. I think that's kind of what we just saw there.
Sure. Yep, completely configurable with, again, multi-bit rate delivery if required, and multiple endpoints combined into single publish points as well. Absolutely.
Excellent. Great. So we've got another one in here. I think it was probably referencing something I said at the start about different cloud providers. About the examples of these. So essentially, that ingest and publish function we talked about that sat on your media can exist anywhere. So this can be inside Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, with our data center infrastructure, like with our partner, Tata Communications, or even inside private cloud, private data center, or as I said, on-premise as well. So essentially, remember, we are not moving your media here. You can have any number of people logging in through a web browser and working on the Blackbird cloud, while all of your source media is sat, protected inside your storage infrastructure where it always was. A question here about costs. So Blackbird is a SaaS model, and essentially there's 2 things that we price on. One is on the number of users you have, and the other is the amount of capacity you need for that ingest and publish engine. The one thing that Blackbird always is fixed cost. So you will license a certain amount of capacity, and then you can use it as much as you want within that. You're never going to get an unexpected bill from us. So we don't price per gigabyte or anything like that. The question also features something about kind of ingress and download and egress. Now, obviously, that's something that is refreshingly you don't need to worry about with Blackbird. 2 reasons there. One is we're not moving your source media, as I said, so there's no interregional egress from within cloud providers. There's no egress from your cloud of your source, and also obviously Blackbird is not egressing video either. because remember, we're just sending metadata requests for publishing back to your infrastructure. So the only thing that is ever going to be egress on that publish function is the finished file being delivered or downloaded to wherever you need it to be. And if your distribution and delivery function is at within the same network and infrastructure as your source, then there's no egress there at all. So one thing you may have just noticed, a poll has popped up on your screen. We may have some people starting to leave the webinar now. We'll stick around and answer a few more questions. If you do have to go, thanks very much for joining us. You can answer the poll and let us know how you want to get in touch. You can also get in touch on the website or using the email that you can see on the screen there as well. So if you do have to head off for another meeting, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. So Jeff, I'm gonna keep going because we've still got questions coming in, which is great. I'm going to throw one over to you here.
Sure, I know which one. It's the round trip question.
It's not actually, but you're more than welcome to answer that one as well. I was going to ask you a question here about adding metadata into the clips and searching that. So obviously we saw you using marker points.
Sure.
And I mentioned a logging backend, but it'd be great to learn a little more about the metadata side.
Absolutely. So let me just do a match frame back over here for a second. So we can absolutely add metadata. It's actually quite amazing how we can do this. You can do it either through manual input or basically log input. We can do it in both scenarios. We take a ton of metadata. When you're looking at these pictures, it's not just video and audio, it's the associated metadata. So if you're, let's say, pulling MXF content in, any of the associated metadata that is embedded in that can come in and be displayed. We also have a very interesting scripting method of not only pulling in clips with metadata, but injecting metadata from external sources as well. So we can do that as well.
Excellent, good stuff. And yes, the other question you spotted was about round trip workflows with Media Composer. Now,
absolutely.
Yep. That's something we've been doing for a long time.
Absolutely. So certainly we began by being able to deliver to Media Composer, and that included being able to deliver, of course, cuts, dissolves, layers, multiple audio tracks, and that also included multi-camera and multi-group information. Even with the modern cameras with LUTs, we could even pass through the LUT information between Blackbird and Media Composer, and we can reverse the process. So we can take an AAF from, let's say, a Media Composer environment, pull it into Blackbird, have it relink to the content that's sitting there, modify the content as required, and deliver it back into Media Composer. So yes, round trip is absolutely part of the Blackbird platform as well.
Excellent. So we've still got questions coming in here. This is fantastic. Thank you for all your input. A couple of questions on the audio side here, so I'll answer because it's an easy one. It says, how about voiceovers? So yeah, Blackbird does have the ability to record voiceover down directly into the timeline just through your laptop microphone, or potentially even an external microphone, or even external desk. So yeah, there's a literally, we're not seeing Jeff's screen anymore, but we can have a look. If I jump over my screen here, if I'm in the edit interface, we can actually see a microphone button right here on my screen, and that's going to enable me to record voiceover down straight into one of my audio tracks that we've got here as well.
True.
The follow-up to this, Jeff, which I'll throw to you, is around adding more audio capabilities. So we mentioned there's up to 32 tracks within the editor of audio.
36. 36. No worries.
But it's asking about how do we add additional audio and bring in potentially either other audio track or other audio files into that.
Sure. So we can, of course, import WAV files, MP3s, a whole variety of audio formats. Additionally, just because I have to say it, we can bring in broadcast waves with all the metadata associated within a broadcast wave file, including microphone allocations and things like that. So it's not just audio from file-based workflow, it's from external files, and we even have the ability to sync or auto sync multiple audio tracks with associated video. And we, of course, hold all the metadata within that audio as well.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, great. So I'm going to, a question here back on the publishing side of things about creating client profiles for specific deliveries. Yes, we can. So the interface that you've seen, you can have any number of published buttons on the left, as we call them. Each one of those has a different profile in terms of what we're delivering and where. But also what you can have is actually multiple accounts that users can work in. So, you know, within your install, you could have different accounts that can not only have their own media, their own branding, their own users, but also their own publish profiles and publish buttons built into it. So there's a lot of flexibility around how users access media, where they can publish to, and the settings that sit behind those. Jeff, one for you here, talking about remote production workflows. Right. Can a producer or director or somebody like that get like a view-only feed of the timeline or the interface here?
Absolutely. So what we have is, interestingly enough, we have different ways of, and I'll call it skinning the application. So we can skin it as a review mode. We can, a very simple environment where you don't even have to have a timeline. You could just have the browser window with the sources and the ability to view, review, so that you can simply just make comments and or have the full featured editor. So the choice is yours of how you want to serve this up and how you want it to look. So we can make it as simple as just a viewer to as complex as a and full completed timeline environment as well. So
excellent. And the question talks a little bit about kind of preview of that content. As Jeff said, it's not only different roles within the platform, but we also have the ability to share content outside of the platform in a kind of renderless publish function as well. Yep. Which you know, I think we could, if anyone's interested in that, we can set up a call and have a chat about that.
A good example of that is what you showed right off the beginning with the right on our website. That is the renderless publish function. It's essentially the Blackbird player served up in our commercial web page. So
yeah, excellent. So a question here about keyboard shortcuts.
Sure.
JKL and IO, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only is it keyboard shortcuts, I mean, I built real equivalencies to other editors, including macros, where you can take a whole bunch of keyboard functions and combine them together as a macro.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. So yeah, here's another one about just a few simple questions we've got still coming in here, guys. The thumbnail feature, selecting thumbnail, essentially it's really easy. Wherever the user leaves their cursor, so whatever their preview frame is in the editor, that's going to be your published thumbnail when it comes out of Blackbird.
Yeah, full control over what you thumbnail. We don't want you to get an obscure facial expression for your thumbnail for social. We want to make sure you have control over that.
Definitely. Now, interesting question here about monitoring and controlling the quality of the video and the audio. Now, what we've got to remember, the crucial thing with Blackbird is that what you're working on, what we've seen Jeff using to edit there, is essentially, you know, a working version to allow you to access your content instantly, you know, edit it in a professional way, and have a kind of a working environment for your users there. But when we're actually outputting content, it's always being built from your source media. So essentially, you know, the quality is assured in the fact that the Blackbird cloud is not really handling and generating video content. What we're doing is we're building up metadata-based edits that are going to always apply back onto the video and audio back in there. So, you know, everything you do in Blackbird is image-based, absolutely frame accurate. It's a 100% accurate real-time preview of what you're creating. But in terms of what you're going to get delivered back, it's obviously built directly out of your source media as well. So there's no quality degradation or anything like that as part of the process. And I think our last question probably here, just a really quick one about edge pulling content from leech servers. Essentially, you know, we use standard sharing and mounting procedures. So Edge can pretty much connect to any kind of standard storage infrastructure. And as we saw, also take standard live stream inputs from baseband SDI up to RTMP, HLS, 6E, and others as well. So we can happy to dig into the details of any requirements like that kind of after the call. If anybody wants a follow-up demo or call, get in touch, as you can see on the screen, and we can dig into that. But generally, we can plug into pretty much any existing infrastructure and really quickly, really easily give you a scalable distributed access here. So I think we've used more than our hour allocated. Thanks to everyone who's still on the line with us. We've still got a good group here. If you've got more questions, please do get in touch. Jeff, thank you very much for getting up early to join us this morning.
Pleasure.
And I hope we speak to you all very soon. Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks.